So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. This week on answering Ask HR subreddit questions because I'm banned, I'm going to be actually going to the legal advice subreddit where we got questions about termination of insurance 8 days after hospitalization, a question about blackmailing in the workplace, and finally a pregnancy discrimination question. So let's start first with the termination of insurance. Person was had a stroke seizure. They were hospitalized, discharged shortly thereafter. About a month and a half later, they got a notice of Cobra and said that their insurance was terminated on October 31st as a result of not working for 30 days, which is quite strange, right? So that is, only an 8-day change. A person was confused and lost in the whole situation. HR filled out Cobra forms in their name and sent them in without their knowledge, and then uh, told the boss that they were applying for long-term disability and their body isn't ready. They said that that's not acceptable, and they fired them. And the question was, anything can help. Well, for one, the ending of insurance is unacceptable, right? So if insurance was truly ended, during the course of FMLA, that is illegal. Insurance is required to be maintained through the course of FMLA, and so in theory, at least, insurance should be continued from October until roughly 480 hours, 3 months later. So I think that that's the first red flag. Cobra should not be filled out. I don't know what it means that Cobra forms were filled out in their name. That doesn't make any sense. That's not how it would work. It doesn't make any sense. It sounds like there's some sort of lost in translation there. Generally speaking, a company should go through the Americans with Disabilities Act reasonable accommodation process after coming back, but they're not required to hold your job. And it doesn't appear that you're seeking a reasonable accommodation to your job to maintain it, to continue doing it at the level that you were doing it previously. So I think that, ultimately the termination, is likely legal. If you have run out of your FMLA protections, I believe it's been 3 months. So as a result, that would be an acceptable move for the most part. But losing your insurance roughly 2.5 months ago, that is not acceptable under FMLA. You would typically file a claim with the Department of Labor if that's what indeed happened. The next one up is an interesting one. It says my wife's job just hired a guy who was fired from his last job for blackmailing women he was sleeping with. Wife's boss, who is dumb, hired a guy, no background check with previous employer. No one does that. I mean, I think that's kind of silly. You don't do a background check with previous employers. You could perhaps, try to do some references, but that's not the employer's fault, and that's silly. He was fired, allegedly, he was fired for having sexual activities at his job with married women and then blackmailing them. It was allegedly confirmed by a previous manager. HR said it was too late, of course. Yes, and says now he's going to be training him alone, this person's wife, and is uncomfortable knowing the information. What can she, quote, legally do since she isn't supposed to know about it? Well, she can not have sex with this guy, all right? And then as a result, he won't be blackmailed and be totally fine. This seems like the OP's wife, or the original poster's wife, is kind of setting him up, right? But to answer the question, nothing. There's no legal action because this is all hearsay. This is absolute hearsay, and beyond that, even then, ultimately, I I don't understand what the problem is for this employee. It sounds like they're setting up hidden cameras. Unless your wife has sex with him with hidden cameras, I would just stay far away and be pleasant and polite and move on. Make sure that you're not involved with him. The last one is a really sad one, but I have there's probably too many questions to really get a full picture of this one. They work for a small bank, 500 employees or less, and they've been there 2 years, and that they're eligible for promotion every 90 days based on proven performance. I imagine based on performance and training, right? So they learn more, and that's the promotions that you can get. The OP was pregnant last year and had complications, and looks like they had an ADA requirement at some point to have extra breaks, which is great, and gave leniency on how long they were staying on task due to said complications. So it sounds like they were not training elsewhere as well, right? They were staying on a specific task for a longer time, because they were unable to, physically unable. Gave birth towards the end of the year, and so ultimately they were gone for, a significant period of time. Went into training with are making $4, $4 to $5 more than them, and have been promoted several times. A supervisor was asked why they were promoted, said, "We just decided to pause on you to get you through the pregnancy." And I suppose the unspoken here is that you have to be trained to move up, right? And you have to be trained to learn more, and then ultimately, then you'll get more. Uh, Absolutely boneheaded comment, and but I understand, generally speaking, well, they didn't want to put more stress. It could be pregnancy discrimination. It could be an example of pregnancy discrimination. If the promotions are purely at the sake of not related to training, not related to moving and moving up, but just simply the idea that you're being promoted because you've been there for a period of time, this is an example of discrimination here, if that's all it is. But if it's training and you're physically unable to do the training, then it gets a little bit more complicated and it's a little bit murkier. You certainly want to meet with the supervisor and the manager to understand what their perspective is and what the future looks like. But if you feel uncomfortable, you need to file a claim with the EEOC. So little murky waters, and it's very much fact dependent. What do you guys think about it in the comments down below? Is this a clear sign of pregnancy discrimination, or is it a little bit more fact specific? Leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.